So welcome everyone to our first meeting of the Infrastructure Task Force. This meeting is going to be a little different because we haven't selected a chair yet, so staff will kind of walk us through until we get to the point where we have selected a chair and a vice chair. I appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to join us in this endeavor. We'll just kind of be running down our agenda here. You guys should each have one of these. So we'll start with our roll call. Randy, do you want to walk us through the roll call?
Yes. Can you let me know if I'm saying your name correctly? Diana Mancy Nunez.
Correct, and I'm here.
Okay. Kendra Rowley, absent. Linda Culp.
Here.
Nicole Moreland.
Here.
Navarro how do you say it?
Valenzuela.
Valenzuela.
Yes.
And Richard Stern. Do you go by Dick or Richard?
I go by Dick, yeah.
Dick Stern.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott Maloney.
Here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Brandy. So on to agenda item number 1, so staff introduction. So I'm Jill Bankston. I'm the city engineer and the director of engineering here for the city of Encinitas. I've been here with Encinitas about 3 years now, a little bit over 3 years. I know, it's only been 3 years. It seems like a long time. Before that, I worked for the County of San Diego for 16 years, and before that, I worked for Caltrans for about 5 years. So this is a great little city. It's been an interesting journey for me, starting out state and then county and then city and then a small city that Encinitas is. It's really nice because you get to know people. Certainly at the state level, you don't know anybody. At the county, you know, like a few of the main players in some of the communities, but you really get to know more of the people. So it's been a really neat opportunity to be here at such a nice little small city. So I'm really glad to be leading this effort, and with me I've got Brandy.
Hi, I'm Brandy Lewis. I've been with the city for 15 years, and I swear when Jill said she's only been here a few years, it doesn't seem possible because she has been essential since the minute she got here. So we're so grateful that she's our city engineer. I worked in City Council's office for 10 years, and I sat on several City Council subcommittees. So this is exciting for me. It's been a few years since I've sat on a committee, but I'm just grateful to all of you for volunteering your time. And I'm a resident as well. I've been a resident for 20 years. I know I don't look old enough, but I got my house before I was 30, and I love the community, and I want to serve in any way that I can. So if you ever have questions or you need anything, if you want copies of printouts, please don't hesitate. I will do anything I can to help you.
So Brandy's got a lot of experience, like she said, kind of running committees and things like this. This is a task force, so it's a little bit more low-key, a little bit more laid-back than a committee would be. But we're still going to try to kind of stick to the agenda, stick to the rules, and that'll keep us on track. So for public comment, what we've done here is we've added a slot for public comment at the beginning of the meeting and then public comment on the end of the meeting. Did we throw it on the end or just the beginning? Yep, beginning and end. So you'll see it number 2 and number 9. That will allow us to kind of stick to our agenda and kind of get through items, and then if people had something that piqued their interest, they could let us know either before or at the end. It'll be interesting to see if we get very many attendees. I had one member of the public who had reached out to me, so I expected him to be here, but he's not here, so I think he'll make a future meeting. But it's a really important task that we have ahead of us that will really impact the city, so I'm hopeful that we'll maybe have some more people at future meetings. So the next, and then we'll have pink slips. Do we have slips tonight?
I can go grab some of the council chambers.
We
it's
don't
been
need
crazy.
them because there's nobody here.
If someone comes, we can allow them to speak at the end. But in other council subcommittees, we would have members of the public show up, and then they would want to talk on every item, and it was disruptive to the flow of business. So we found giving them an opportunity at the beginning and at the end, everybody was happy with that. So if we want to change it up at any time, we can. And I wanted to let you all know, too, the recordings and the agendas and everything, we have a subpage on the city's website, and we'll be putting all the information there as well.
So you could have someone take 3 minutes in the beginning, that same person take 3 minutes in the end?
Yeah, sometimes, our speaker may be here. Pick up the speakers.
Thank you. Come on in, you can have a seat. Hi.
Hi.
Did you want to do public comments? Or just participate? Let me get you a seat.
Hello there. You came. I was just mentioning we had a member of the public who was interested, and we thought you may come. So.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing well, how are you? Wait.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I know.
Hi, good to see you, Ron.
Good to see you too.
All right, so we were just going over kind of the ground rules. We've got public comments at the beginning of the meeting and then public comment at the end. So we're going to probably have a pretty quick agenda tonight, but if you had any comments, then you'll have an opportunity at the end if you wanted to pull a speaker slip to provide your public comment.
Okay.
Excellent. So discussion of the ground rules, Brown Act, Rosenberg Rules of Orders, quorum requirements, attendance. So we sent out a little packet of information. You guys all got that from Kathy Hollywood. I think most people are familiar with Robert's Rules of Order. That's a really lengthy document that is extensive. So Rosenberg Rules of Order is just kind of a condensed version. So you guys can read through that at your leisure, but it has a good kind of step-by-step on how the chair should operate, how they work through the agenda, what their role is. So the chair is basically the one who makes sure that everybody's applying by the rules of conduct. The chair's role is to encourage discussion amongst the committee members or the task force members, try to find points of agreement so that a motion can be made and seconded and then voted upon, and then making sure that he's announcing, or he or she is announcing, the number of the agenda, the purpose of the meeting, the purpose of the agenda item, things like that. And it also goes through like the basic motions that you can make, kind of highlighted. You can amend a motion, you can substitute a motion, you can suggest a friendly amendment. It's all very formal, and we'll kind of see how that works for this group. And we can kind of adjust it as we need to. I suspect everyone will be very respectful, and we won't have a need to work through some of the items that they talk about in the process.
Is everyone here familiar with the Brown Act, and have you used it? So the Brown Act basically states that if we do an agenda, we have to inform the public what we're going to talk about. That's why we put all this information out. And then when you're conducting business, try to keep it in the public forum. Don't have serial emails. Try to avoid reply all and things of that nature. And then just make sure that we have a quorum. If you're ever going to be absent, please let us know, because if we don't have a majority of the members, then we have to cancel the meeting. And in some instances, we will have speakers coming or consultants here, and we want to make sure you're getting all the information that you need, and if you miss meetings, and if we're going to be moving quickly. So please let me know as soon as possible if you're going to miss a meeting.
But these recordings will also be available online, so if you do miss a meeting, then you can go back and listen to the meeting so you're caught up and ready to go at the next meeting. This one we already talked a little bit about.
I have a request when you're making motions. If you could please state the motion, try to be clear, because I know sometimes we get into discussion and they trail on. So whoever takes the role of the chair, before you call for vote, if you could just repeat the motion, especially if it's really complex. That way we make sure we get it accurately. And then when we vote, if we're recording and we don't have video, maybe state your name when you're voting. And that's all. Then we'll get into the meat of the committee, what we're going to be doing.
Yes. So on November 16th, 2022 is when the city manager took forward an item to create this task force. So the action stated that the task force was to evaluate the city's infrastructure, backlog, prioritization, and anticipated financial needs and opportunities for funding for future infrastructure. So that you guys know, a capital project is anything over $100,000 that has a useful life of 5 years or more. So it's not a program, it's not funding for a certain activity. It's something that will exist for 5 years or more. So most of the stuff that you guys are expecting we'll talk about, roads, bridges, sidewalks, things like that, that's all infrastructure. So the way that we budget projects here at the city is we usually kind of take it in chunks. We'll start with the study, and then the design and the environmental and the permitting, and then we'll fund the construction. So it takes multiple years typically to execute larger projects. And then in the staff report, it notes that the amount available each year is insufficient to cover all the costs of the new infrastructure that we'd like to have here in the city, as well as the updates to older infrastructure and our deferred maintenance backlog. So the draft mission and overarching goals that were assigned for this committee there's 5 parts: to identify the city's capital improvement backlog and future needs, define the criteria and clarify processes for identifying and prioritizing future city CIP needs, ensuring the CIP program and prioritization is linked to the city's policies and planning priorities. Yes.
I think we included the city council's agenda
Yeah.
report that really spelled everything out.
Ensure transparency and communications about infrastructure needs, challenges, and the work of the ITF, and then to make recommendations regarding funding the city's infrastructure backlog. So those overarching goals and draft mission for this task force. And then for the scope of work, there were 5 items: to identify the city's infrastructure backlog, future needs, what criteria should be used to prioritize needs, estimate the total cost of the infrastructure backlog, estimate the cost of a 10-year infrastructure future forecast, and then make recommendations that address funding the infrastructure backlog and 10-year future forecast. So we'll be looking at a variety of different funding sources that could be available. And then after that, it has the topics that are to be presented to this task force. And you'll see later, we'll work through the schedule that we've put together for the meetings that we have planned, and that basically follows this outline that was presented in the staff report that was approved by council. All right, so that's that one.
Cheers.
All right.
So are you guys feeling comfortable to introduce yourselves and select a chair?
Now's the time. So I don't know if we want to just kind of work our way around the table. I think that probably makes the most sense. So Diana, if you're ready.
Great. Diana Mancy-Nunez. I'm a longtime resident of Leucadia. I've been here for about 35 years. About 3 years ago, we were interested, a couple of neighbors, in finding out what was going on with our rail crossings. And because we had been at it for decades, coming back and forth with the city. So after contacting the city and finding that our rail crossing wasn't even on any real CIP listing, it was time to organize. And we organized and created a group called Now Leucadia. And now Leucadia has kind of grown arms and legs, and one of our major goals is to keep the community informed, because people, of course, were alarmed by the news that they weren't getting a rail crossing in a year and a half, because everyone thought that was what was going on. In this process, I've attended 3 CIPs, either by video or actually attending, have seen the process, have actually seen that there are some shortcomings in the process itself. And I know Joy Lyons, the council person, had suggested about a year ago that we needed to define, the priorities and the variables by which infrastructure is prioritized. And I can't agree with her more. It shouldn't be by the squeaky wheel, whoever shows up. It should be, this is editorial, but what I've seen is that oftentimes there is much conflict because you may have a group that's very vocal, but the need may be very small as far as its effect on the population or the city as a whole. Also, there are unrepresented groups in the city, perhaps that do not have representation, and they may be those with the greatest need. So I'm very happy to be here. My professional background is I'm a registered nurse by training. I worked in the biotech industry and pharmacovigilance for about 25 years. I have familiarity with entitlement processing as a previous owner of commercial and residential property. So that's that.
Thank you. Nicole?
Great. Hi, I'm Nicole Moreland. I grew up in Encinitas. My mom still lives here, and so I have deep roots in the community, although I have spent most of my adult life living elsewhere, but I've come back home and want to turn my attention to what's going on in this area. My current work role is with the City of Seattle, where I moved here from. I'm the budget manager for the Department of Transportation for the city. And so I have experience with prioritizing funding needs, and there's never enough to go around, so you really have to focus on the projects that, on the whole, best meet the community's needs that we're trying to serve. I also have some experience in business operations management of the conservation department in a utility, so I have a little bit of utility background. And I am passionate about sustainability and environmental issues, climate change, as well as mobility and the equity of our transportation system. So I'm interested in how those infrastructure needs get prioritized in our city. I also have a small child, and so want to make sure that we've got infrastructure that supports his future needs as well.
Thank you. Scott?
My name is Scott Maloney. My wife and 3 kids and I live in District 1 on Bellamar Drive, which is right off of Saxony and Quail Hollow in the neighborhood, kind of right before you get up to the golf course. We've been there since 2009. Before that, we were in San Diego for about 15 years. I currently work for a global engineering consulting firm named Black & Veatch. We're in the business of infrastructure. Black & Veatch does everything from power to water to telecommunications. I work in their state and local government business practice, which means I'm helping local governments with all their infrastructure needs. Before I joined Black & Veatch, I was with a company called Poseidon Water, which is a private company that built the seawater desalination plant in Carlsbad. So my background is really water, primarily when we talk about infrastructure. But in my current profession, I'm finding myself focused a lot on decarbonization, electrification. So I have great interest in that. Obviously, great interest in stormwater, top of mind these days. I'm just excited to be here and happy to lend my experience.
Linda?
Great. Well, hello everyone. Linda Culp. Been a resident about 25 years, and for about 23 of those have been over in District 3 over in the Seagate Village area near Florida Vista Grade School, where that is. For 29 years I was a planner at the San Diego Association of Governments, and they're the regional planning agency for all the cities, including City of Encinitas in our region. And for most of that time, I was the main rail planner, so I'm very familiar with the Coastal Rail Corridor. We, for many, many years, staffed the Lausanne Rail Corridor Agency, which is a joint powers authority, not only in San Diego, but 6 counties through LA and San Luis Obispo. So real familiar with the Lausanne Corridor. The San Diego office is in downtown San Diego, so my main mode since 1995 has been the coaster, so real familiar with public transportation and taking trains. For the last several years at Sandag, I was the active transportation corridor director, so worked on a lot of bicycle and pedestrian projects, and if you've used the Coastal Rail Corridor down in Cardiff, that was a project that we partnered with Caltrans and the city and the community on, and I love to walk that with my daughter a lot. So I've done things like that throughout my career, always kind of managed projects, whether they were in any of those modes, but real familiar with kind of planning, environmental, permitting, implementation, construction. It's kind of where I focused on. Real familiar with public meetings, making presentations, staffing public meetings, so what you guys are doing. So I have a big appreciation for what you guys do behind the scenes and then when you get to the meeting, so appreciate that. So I live over in District 3. My husband also retired about a year after I did. I retired 2 years ago. And we like traveling. We have 2 adult kiddos. One's still with us and one's out in North Carolina. So happy to be here, happy to serve and take on these things. Everything sounds so important. There's never enough funding to go around, but maybe we can have a little input on that as well. So thanks.
Thank you. Dick?
Thanks. My name is Dick Stern. I've been living in Encinitas now since 2000, so I'll good amount of time. I've got a couple engineering degrees, a BS in mechanical engineering and a master's in civil engineering with a focus on coastal engineering. And I worked for Westinghouse selling steam turbine generators, transmission and distribution equipment. So very familiar with building power plants and that kind of thing. And then I worked for IBM in sales and marketing management for about 30 years. I'm the president of the Encinitas Ranch Community Association. That's an HOA that adjoins Quail Gardens Drive. I'm also a member of the Encinitas Ranch Golf Authority and been on that since 2012. Been the president of the HOA since 2007. And I've become very interested recently because of all the development going along Saxony Road and Quail Gardens Drive. There's about 1,300 housing units that are going in an area that's about 1 square mile. So I formed a consortium in the last 8 months of all the HOAs and communities that adjoin Saxony and Quail Gardens Drive to advocate for traffic mitigation. The traffic on that road and those 2 roads has really become really horrifying, and it's a very dangerous area too. And we're talking about widening the bike paths along Quail Gardens Drive, and that's going to be an interesting proposition to take on. So I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to be here and participate and help out in any way I can.
Thank you. Navarro?
So yeah, my name is Navarro Valenzuela, and I grew up here in Encinitas. And then, I went to college in LA. I lived in LA for a while, and I lived also in other countries. And that really sparked my interest in public transportation and infrastructure and how cities are designed. So, I lived in Europe for a bit and South America, and, there's always a difference. There's that big city, small city combination. And anyways, I got back here to Encinitas, and then I got involved with housing issues and building affordable housing. But part of, what I started to realize is that along with building housing, you need infrastructure. So it's been a parallel paths in a way. And more recently, I work at the UCSD Design Lab, which basically it's a hub for research and best practices that deal with design in different areas for transportation, housing, medicine, and so on. So that's something that I like to explore, like what is out there internationally that can be applied here at a local level.
So no shortage of qualifications around the table here. We have a very impressive group, so it's always interesting. So it's great to hear about everything that you guys bring to the table here. I guess just raise your hand if you're interested in being the chair.
Yeah, be interested.
Linda, okay.
If anyone else.
Okay, I guess we can make a motion to have Linda Culp be the chair of the committee. If anyone would like to make that motion, I will entertain a motion. Anyone would like to?
So we
to
need
make
someone
a motion?
to make it, and then we
Yep.
need someone to second.
I make the motion to make Linda Culp the chair.
I will second the motion. I will
And-
defer to one of my colleagues to second.
All right, so we'll do a roll call vote then. Go around the table. Are you ready, Randy?
Yes.
Diana,
Yes.
Kendra Rowley, oh, she's not here. Linda Culp, I guess, can you vote for yourself?
Yes. I don't know.
Nicole Moreland,
Yes.
Navarro Valenzuela.
Yes.
Richard Stern, Dick Stern,
Yes.
and Scott Maloney.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Julie. I think.
I was thinking, I was like,
Do we have someone who would like to be vice chair in case Linda is unable to or absent? Okay,
I have some experience, so
wonderful. Is there
unless someone else really wants it.
is there a motion for?
I'll make a motion.
Fantastic. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Wonderful. You ready for the next
Yes,
vote?
Diana Nunez,
Yes.
Linda Culp,
Yes.
Nicole Moreland,
Yes.
Navarro Valenzuela.
Yes.
Dick Stern,
Yes.
Scott Maloney.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have a chair and a vice chair.
Does that mean we have to move, or can we just stay where we're at?
You can stay wherever you want. We'll update your name cards. How about that? Okay, so that's wonderful. We have another slide, I think, that kind of runs through the schedule.
I handed out the schedule as well, so you would all have a copy to make notes on.
Yeah, so again, this kind of follows the flow of the topics to be presented in the staff report, and we kind of thought about what's the best way to share the information and make sure that you guys kind of understand all of the pieces of information that we're trying to convey through the staff report. So this is the proposed schedule. So at our next meeting, we'll have detail on the city budget. So that will be revenues, expenditures, operating budget versus capital budget. Following that, we'll have some information on capital project development. So a little bit of information on how an idea becomes an actual project and the various steps that we have to go through. Following that, the engineering infrastructure needs. So that's roads, bridges, sidewalks, things along those lines. Following meeting will be other infrastructure needs, so our IT needs, public works needs, fire, parks, sheriff. Things that you won't see up there is water and wastewater. And the reason that is because those are enterprise funds, and they are funded by the ratepayer fees. So that funding source can only be used for water and sewer projects. And they do a rate study every 5 years or so to determine whether they need to increase rates to pay for whatever their infrastructure needs are. So this is looking more at general fund or assessment districts or grants or bonds or any of the other kind of funding sources that would go towards infrastructure needs beyond the enterprise funds.
Jill, can I just interrupt? So I just want to make sure I understand. Does that mean that those infrastructure areas are off the table for consideration, or just in terms of funding?
We can talk about it. So I'll run through this, and then we have an opportunity for you guys to say, like, hey, I really want to hear more about the water or sewer. So I know we have areas, believe it or not, in Encinitas that are still on septic, and I know that's certainly been brought up in the past. That's something that people may want to address. But there are policies that say, hey, if you want to be incorporated into the sewer system, you have to pay for your connection to the sewer system. The city as a whole doesn't take on those costs. But we can bring out our, Isam is our director of utilities, and he can provide some information that we can talk about whether there's a need or a desire to look into additional funding for those enterprise funds.
Okay.
So is that all managed by the San Diego Water District? So all
it depends on where you are in the city. So we've got water for everyone, but we also have Leucadia Wastewater District. We also have OMWD.
Oh, yeah.
So it depends on where you are.
Right.
All right. So then after we talk about what our needs are, we have the quantification of infrastructure needs. So that's the dollars. So we'll take a look at all the projects that all the different departments want. And any other ideas or wants that the committee has or needs or priorities. And we'll be looking to assign dollar values to all of that so that we can understand what we need as a city. And then the term that this task force is to look into is a 10-year block, 2025 to 2035. So then moving forward, it's taking a look at, okay, so what are the projects that we really want to fund in that 10-year period? How much do they cost? And then we'll look to see how do we fund them. So then the meetings after we quantify and figure out the dollar values, we'll be talking about what are the funding opportunities. So there's assessment districts, and there are taxes, and there are bonds, and there are grants, and we'll walk through kind of all the different ways that we can generate some more revenue to deliver the important projects for the community. And then we'll have a couple meetings where we'll talk about how do we prioritize or rank projects, and what are the significant projects for the city, which are the ones that we want to pull into that 10-year time frame and figure out a way to get those built or funded. And then the next meeting in October, we'd be looking at, all right, so now we've talked through all the possibilities, we've picked our projects. These are the projects that we're going to say are important to the city. And then we'll present those to the city council for them to provide their feedback. And they may say, well, we don't think those are important, we think these are important, please add these or subtract this one, or whatever the case may be. And then along the way, we'll be working with a polling consultant. So if there is a desire for a tax to be added, that would have to be a ballot measure. So if that is one of the funding sources that you guys would like to explore, we bring on a polling consultant, and then they would go out, kind of talk to the public, see if there is a desire to and a will of the people to fund through a tax or whatever, an assessment district, whatever the case may be, so that we have a good sense of whether that's something that would be successful for the city. Following that, we'd have our final report where we'd lay out, hey, here's our whole infrastructure needs. These are the projects that we've prioritized. This is the cost of all those projects. This is the way that we're recommending they get funded over that 10-year period. And then we would present that to City Council. So that is kind of the interpretation of what they put in the staff report and the meetings we've come up with. So you see one meeting highlighted. So we're the 4th Monday of every month. We've got one that falls on Christmas. I suspect that's probably not the best date for us all to meet. I'm trying to stick to my agenda. Yes, so this is our time to talk about what date we would like to substitute for the December 25th meeting date. We can go a couple of weeks earlier. We can do 1 week earlier. We can do a week later is going to be New Year's. Probably don't want to do New Year's either. City Hall's closed the week between Christmas and New Year's as well. So we can do 2 meetings in January, like a 14, yeah, like a January 8th and the 22nd, something like that, to make up for that December 25th meeting. I don't know if anybody knows at this point whether they're going to be out of town, out of the country.
Do we have a preference? Do we want to do a placeholder, and we can always adjust it down the road? I was thinking the week prior, I think a lot of the other committees were canceled at that time, but other schedules.
The 18th, December 18th. Yeah, it seems like that if we waited till January, it'd be a big gap. Well,
Might be
maybe the 18th.
We can set a placeholder for that Monday the 18th, and then if we have any conflicts, let us know, and if we have to, we can try to do a poll.
And you'll see in there, we're trying to wrap this up in a year, which is the direction from council. So there's a couple months where we've got 2 meetings in October and November. We've got a couple meetings, so it'll be a little bit tighter frequency. And then as we move along, if we decide, hey, we have to add another meeting for X, Y, or Z, we can do that as well. All right, so that is 7. Okay, so then
Topics? Were there
yes. Other requests for additional topics or information. So kind of seeing how this is flowing, we had kind of the little sidebar conversation about water sewer. Is that something that you'd like us to add to the schedule?
I would. I mean, if nothing else, an explanation of the distinction between enterprise funds and other infrastructure that the city covers in its budget.
Sure.
I mean, I'm particularly interested in stormwater, given what's been going on.
Yeah. So stormwater is separate. So that storm drain is separate from water, wastewater.
Right.
So that would definitely be included, whether we include the water sewer piece of but we could certainly add the water sewer piece if that's of interest.
Yeah, I would. I'm very interested. We put in recycled water into a good portion of our community, and I think that's an important topic.
Okay. Add that in there. So we'll come back next week with a revised schedule where we've kind of found a place to fit in the water, wastewater discussion.
You know, I wondered, in looking over the charge that the city council gave us, where the prioritization is, the criteria development.
Yeah, so that's 8 and 8B. So
Okay.
the ITF ranking and significant projects to fund. So that's where we're kind of talking about. So the intent is we'll look at what some other cities are doing as far as how they're prioritizing projects. We'll look at kind of what makes sense for us. The city council is putting together a new strategic plan where they're kind of highlighting what their priorities are.
Okay.
So those 2 meetings will be kind of talking through what makes sense for the city of Encinitas, how would we prioritize based on your feedback, the capital projects.
Okay.
Another area would be good to understand is that this city is going to be dealing with a lot of state mandates, especially on like electrification, decarbonization. So knowing that in advance would allow us to help make some recommendations on where we think money should be spent. So I don't know if that falls into one of those categories already, but
Yeah, that's.
like, what's the deadline for fleet transition? Like 2035 or something? That's coming quick, but not just fleets, facilities.
Yeah, and we've got, we're working on our EV charging station master plan, and we've got our CAP goals, and we've got all of that stuff as
I mean,
well.
do you guys view that as infrastructure as well?
Like the fleet, probably not.
Yeah, not
That's not a
fleet.
capital project.
Facilities?
They're doing the EV master plan currently. Our sustainability manager is putting together. There is information on the website, and I know they put out a proposal for firms to make recommendations on how we do, like what is the best place around the city. So if we're interested, we could maybe get her to do a quick proposal or just give us an update on what the Development Services Department is doing in mandating.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make work for this group, but I think we'd all be smarter if we understood what the city was doing. We could at least opine on it in the final reports. We're not like missing it entirely.
Absolutely.
Also, I know that there are a lot of studies being done for different infrastructure projects and the feasibility or the cost. And without that information, I feel like we're almost shooting in the dark here. If we could have access to the current studies or the conclusions of prior studies, so we're not trying to re-ask questions that have already been asked regarding infrastructure projects. Also, I feel like it's really important that we have global, the ATP, the MAP study, all of those findings I would think would help us lead us in a direction that has been identified by the city. And where do we get a copy of those? When can we review those? How are we going to use those particular underlying documents as a way to as a variable for prioritization as well? Because the city has already done that work. So if we're out here developing our own standards, when the standards are written and held within documents, I think we're kind of not achieving much, or we're creating another distraction per se. So if we can get a handle on or presented those particular studies, I've got a list of them actually. I've been formulating a list over time, the studies that have been done, and also the goals of the city and the strategic workshops in which they actually say, this is the goal. I would assume that we're going to work as a group to achieve those goals that have been identified by the city, not come up with our own goals. So if we can have those overreaching or umbrella documents for review, so we can kind of extract those important variables and then prioritize based on that. So.
Yeah, so that's meeting number 4, engineering infrastructure needs. So then we'll be bringing forward the CAP and the ATP and the MAP and the drainage master plan, all those documents that we've already kind of done the legwork on. We'll be kind of bringing all of that information and kind of sharing that with you. And then as far as strategic plan, there was a meeting, a public meeting, 13th and 14th this month? Yeah. So we have a facilitator that was helping the city council kind of hone in on what their priorities are. So we haven't seen that final document yet. We kind of know which direction they're headed. So once they have that formalized, we will certainly be bringing that to this group, and that will help guide us as far as what the priorities for the city should be.
And how far in advance will we get these documents so we can actually have time to review them? They're very lengthy, many of them.
Yeah, we can start working to put those, point you in the right direction. A lot of them are online already.
Yes.
That they're just, it may not be intuitive where to find them, but we can work on putting them together in a place where you guys can find them all.
We do have on our engineering page, there's a resources page, resources and important links, and it takes you to like the ATP and a bunch of the studies, but I'll make sure that anything we have, I can link on our infrastructure page to that, and then if there's any of the studies you're wanting to see, I can see if we can either get it on the website or get you guys a copy. So don't hesitate to ask if you're aware of anything.
Send me your list. I want to make sure that I haven't
Yeah.
missed something that you guys are aware that we've done before I got here. All right. Any other information that would be helpful as we go on this journey? All right. And we can add more topics as we get into. If we have a meeting on the budget and you guys think, hey, we need an extra meeting to talk about this piece of the budget because we need more information on that, we can adjust and tailor as we go along. Now is an opportunity for public comment, so if anyone back there would like to speak on any of the items we've discussed or has any public comment, you can raise your hand or fill out a speaker slip if we have some back there. Do we have some
Yeah, they're on the table.
Okay. Has anyone submitted a speaker slip? I see no hands. All right. Wonderful. Well, I said it was going to be fast, under an hour. I think that's pretty good for us. So I really appreciate you guys spending your time with us this evening. Our next meeting will be Monday, March 27th, 2023, where we'll focus on the city budget. So our Director of Finance, Teresa McBroom, and her staff will be here to kind of break down everything. Do we have a public comment?
Reasonably so. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Ron Dodge. I'm a resident of what we affectionately call the New Encinitas area. And I've been here for almost 40 years. I haven't lived anyplace else this long. I've participated in a few of the activities here in the city. First start getting involved with the coastal mobility and livability study back in 16, I think, somewhere in there, 16, 17. And then both my spouse and I attended virtually all of the task force for the housing. Interesting sort of topic. And I remember the moment in time when day became night and night became day when Councilmember Berna Horvath announced AB 72 and things changed. And currently I'm on the El Camino Real Specific Plan Task Force, which is an advisory role with no clout. And it's a very interesting situation, problem, and long-range goals. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing how we can, how this all transpires. Great call on all the previous studies. There's a myriad, and the search engine doesn't always work really well at finding all that stuff. So,
yeah, and we
thank
just
you.
updated our website, so it makes it a little more difficult to kind of understand where to go to find things. So.
Well, just so you understand, so we have in our development services department, it's an advanced planning, and so they'll often do the initial work. So the coastal mobility and livability study, they'll get the consultants and they'll study the city and they'll hold workshops and they'll kind of compile the information, and we continue to refine that down until we can identify the key projects that we want to invest in. And once we identify a capital project, that's when it comes over to the engineering division and we actually build and we construct those projects. So the studies do work together, but they also evolve. And as those things evolve, sometimes councils will change or change direction. And so, it's great information, but sometimes there's newer information. So we'll make sure that you get the most current information. And if there's been changes or parts of studies that may be obsolete, we can let you know that too.
One more comment, again, Ron Dodge. The coastal mobility and livability study had a lot of consultants that were hired to participate in that program. So I think there's some pretty valuable information out there that's gradually kind of rolled up and been distilled with the ADP and the map and some other things.
Cross-connect.
The coastal
But I
living
think the
buildings.
bases are good to understand.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, seeing no other public comments, I think we're ready to adjourn. Thank you all very much for your time. Appreciate it.
It's good to meet everyone.
Yeah.
It is the Richard Russo.
Yeah.
Or just a quick signature here.
Oh, from Jill,
Oh.
right?
Oh, we do it. Oh, we do it. Oh, we do it. Oh, we do it.